So we got we wanted to make this rainbow effect, right? That's in this isolated graphic video. Sort of, yeah, this rainbow flying effect here. All right, so what would we do? See, I got so many windows open. All right. So if I draw any given path in Blender, let's just say I've got extra objects turned on. If I go to Edit Preferences and I just type in under the add-ons extra, I've got extra curve objects, and I always like to have extra mesh objects turned on as well. All right, and let's just add, and you can start with a Bezier curve, but sometimes what I like to do is I like to just make a point, but this time, to be simple, I'm just going to add a curve, Bezier curve. That's under Add, Curve, Bezier. So we've got a default Bezier curve right there. If I go into edit mode on it, we see a good old-fashioned Illustrator line. If I hit E for extend, it just extends that point out, and it's by default a 3D curve. So if I hit E for extend, I can then control the path of this by just moving these tangents like three-dimensional Illustrator. And you can select any of these guys and go to control point, and you can change it to a different type, set handle type. So if you wanted it to be free, you can set this one and hit G, and then, well, that is free. Control points, notice the shortcut is V. So if I select it here, I hit V, I can choose vector, and then we have these guys moved individually. So you have as much control over the vector forms here as you do in Illustrator. But one of the things to take into account is you see the steps, 1, 2, 3. The steps are low resolution by default, so you might want to, in object mode, increase the resolution. If I increase the resolution, it makes the curve smoother. Excuse you. Now, if I want this to have like a ribbon sort of quality, watch closely. It's rather complicated. I come over to geometry, and I add extrude. There we go. That's all. So it's not complicated. You just add extrude, and then you have this shape. Now, the thing about it, though, is it's all vertical, which usually is something you might want. And I can't remember because I haven't rehearsed this, but you should be able to tilt the individual parts of the path. There you go. So if you wanted to change the angle of that path or of the ribbon, you just use the tilt object here in edit mode, and you can hit R for rotate, and then to a certain degree you are tilting it. And so you just grab the different points here, or you can just grab it like this and tilt the path. So this way you can have that ribbon sort of shape. This would be a pain in the butt to do in After Effects. That's why they have Cinema 4D built into it. Now, how do we make something like this a rainbow? I'm not sure if this is going to work because I haven't rehearsed it, but let's try it out. I've been thinking about this for the past hour while you guys have been doing this test thingy. Let's go over to the shading tab. Let's go into object mode. Let's give this a new material. And for an object like this that's giving off light, we don't really need it to have like a base color or anything. We want everything to be plugged into the emission. So we could even go further than that. We just plug it into the surface directly. So here's what I mean. If we take a color and just take any sort of given color, an RGB color, input color, where are you? RGB value. So this just, the RGB node just makes any node. So if we say green, we plug that in to the surface, it's just green. And without the principled BSDF shader, without a shader, then what happens is it just gives off light. It's not glowing, but it's not receiving shadows, and it's not receiving reflections or anything like that. So it's just a color. Does that make sense? Sometimes, and most of the time in 3D, you don't want this. But for something like a rainbow that just is refractive, it makes perfect sense. And so what we do then is we just play around with how this color is getting fed into it. So one of the things that I might try is a color ramp. Converter, color ramp. So if we plug in the color up to the surface here, we see part of the color ramp, but not all of it. So it's basically, this is the gradiate tool that you have in all of your Adobe products, but it's a lot more advanced than that. And one of the things that it does that Adobe products don't do with the gradiate is they don't allow you to make it not gradiate. What I mean is we can change it from different interpolation modes. Notice how the gradient changes its sort of intensity here, cardinal. So it's just the way the math from one point to the other interpolates. But you can also have it just be constant. And when it's constant, it's no longer a gradient, it's just on or off. But if I drag it across there, you might see the edge of that. Right here is the edge of it, but we're not seeing much more than that. So what we have to do if it doesn't like tie to it properly is we have to give it some coordinates. And so to do that, I make sure that Node Wrangler is turned on. So Node Wrangler in the add-ons is turned on. So that way I just take any sort of texture or material and I can hit Control-T. And what it does is it adds a texture coordinate node and a mapping node, but it also thinks I want an image texture. I don't. I just want the gradiate texture. The reason why I just want the gradiate texture is you start to see where that edge is. And right now it's using the UVs, and it doesn't really have UVs. We just want it to use an object. There we go. So you can see now as I move that gradiate texture, it's moving that shape right there. So that's the point on it. And I can use these guys over here, such as the rotation and the location, to change where that point is. Can you extrapolate what I'm going to do from here? So if I rotate it on one of the axes, I'm not sure which one, and it might not work as well as I hope. There we go. Just rotating it, it's counterintuitive, but I rotated it on the x-axis. And it's not going to follow the curve the way I want. And there might be a different way to make it do that. That's what I was worried about. But anyway, I'm just going to set up some different points. So these things, sometimes they're called flags, sometimes they're called stops. I'll just make them different colors of the rainbow. I'll add another stop over here, make this stop yellow, make sure the brightness is all the way up, add another stop, make this one green, add another stop, make this one blue, add another stop, make this one indigo. So I don't know, Roy G. Biv? Something like that? Okay, good. All right. So, and it's not very bright right now, so we could probably increase the brightness of it later on. But what I'm trying to do is see if I can get it to match the surface of it the right way. And I might just experiment with the different modes here. And it's a fun way to make like lots of different graphics, but if I rotate that, so that's on vector, and if I rotate on a different axis, will it give me what I'm wanting?
What if you were to texture it while it was like a square and then actually?
That's what I was thinking too.
Like that would obviously mess up its texturing or like placing the movement texture, but if we just try to do it right.
Actually, I think UV might be the best way to go here. I think your point is well taken, but if I go into edit mode, when it's in UV, it is following it. But when it's in object or any of those will move, the texture will move, will stay where it is, but the object won't. So maybe counterintuitively, UV is the best way to go. And here it's on point, here it's on normal. Just got to basically find the right one. Texture. I'm going to keep it on texture for now. Another thing that you can do is tie it to another object. So for example, if I have a empty, like right here, this empty, and then I can say, all right, instead of tying it to the UVs of this object, you could tie it to an empty, and that empty would be, or you could tie it to any other object, but we'll tie it to the empty. And so that way, wherever I move the empty, G, it moves that texture. And so if I scale that empty as well, it scales the texture, and if I rotate that empty, it rotates that as well. But that might be a way to do it, but I don't like the way it's not following the contours of the shape. So it seems like the better way of doing it would be to use UV, and then to change the scale in one way or another, so it gets you something close to what you're going for. Change the scale, and then the rotation. And I might not be able to get exactly where I want, but I can get pretty close. What?
Location downwards.
That's pretty close to a rainbow right there.
That is a rainbow.
That is a rainbow. Okay, but you see how I had to play with it to get it, and I didn't give up. right? And often this is how I operate in Blender and all my software, is I just brute force change things until it starts getting close to what I want. And I know that's frustrating for a lot of people, but it works for me and it's fun for me, and I figure out stuff that way. I knew I've made rainbows in the past, so I knew this was roughly the right direction, but I didn't know exactly what to do. It was sort of like getting to that bowling alley last night. I didn't know exactly how to get there, but I knew if I went in the smell of musty things, followed my nose, I would get to where I was going. Now here's where things get interesting. If I go into edit mode, now that I've built this, I can take this and I can hit extend, E for extend, and I can just keep doing this. Move this around, and I can just keep drawing my rainbow. And here's what's really kind of cool, because it's all one curve, I can open up the pencil tool here, and I can just draw other rainbows if I want now too. All right, so you can do rainbow shapes. So that's kind of fun, right? So that way you don't have to actually manually create your curves. And if I don't like any of it, I can hit X, delete all those vertices, but I haven't deleted, this is counterintuitive as well. I still have the curve object because I'm in edit mode, but I just deleted all of its vertices. So the container for the curve is still there, but no vertices are there, which is why we don't see anything. So you can be in edit mode on an object that has nothing in it. You can't do that in Adobe. If you're coming from Adobe World, that doesn't make any sense. But in the Blender and programming world, that makes perfect sense. You can have a function with nothing in it. And those of you that have had web design, you can write a CSS rule, or a CSS class, but have no rules in it, right? It's the same thing.
That makes sense.
That makes sense, right? You can use one thing to make sense of another thing. So anyway, I'll just draw my rainbow. There it is. It's lovely. Now, after we have a rainbow though, remember our isolated graphics animation, the rainbow was growing. How do we do that? What?
I remember you teaching us this last semester.
You're thinking of After Effects. In After Effects, it's called it's like near the wiggle pads thing. It's trim pads. Trim pads. You don't have that here, but you have something similar, and it's better. You have path animation. Not path animation, not active spline. Damn it, where are you? Geometry. So if we want to make it wider, we can make it wider here. But then start and end mapping. There it is, sorry. It's been a long day already. So you can just basically animate the end point and the start point. Okay? You can even have them taper if you wanted to. And so end resolution, spline. I'm not sure what those settings do. I haven't changed those before. Okay, but if I wanted to create an animation from that, let's go back over to layout. Let's turn on our shading so we just see what we're doing. And if we wanted to change the locations of any of those points, we can just grab them here, hit G. Let's rotate them as well, so that way they're like more funky and fun, so it's twirling around.
And it would have taken them years to make this back then.
Decades, Haley. All right. In a sense, this did take decades to make, or centuries to make, because all the people that had to come up with the programming methods and the math and everything to bring this to life had to bring all this together. Notice if I'm low resolution, what that does, that's some cool effects, and higher resolution, that does this. Also, I don't like how rough I've made it, so there's some actual tools to do this. If we go to curve, we can go to clean up, we can go to segments, let's see here, smooth. So we just can smooth things up a bit more, and that might smooth things up because this curve is a little too sharp. G, R, it's kind of crossing in on itself. G. Segments. You can also subdivide the whole thing, and that's better. So it's much more of a noodle now. But what's kind of cool about something like this is if we make a simple animation with the mapping, where are you? Start and end mapping. We'll just start at nothing, Is taper turned on? I don't think so. So I'll set a keyframe here, and you can just click that. Now we have a keyframe. Go to frame 100. Drag it all the way to the end. Set another keyframe. And so now if we play it back, we see it's growing. Okay, so then let's take our camera. Let's see where it's starting. It's starting from over here. So I'm just going to, with my mouse in this view, I'm going to hit Shift tilde, and then I'm just going to fly over here with the WASD keys, which is my favorite way of moving my camera around, so I can see what my camera sees. Yep. Nope, it's Shift tilde. Tilde is a little key under the escape key.
Okay.
Yeah. All right, so if I start here, I'm just going to hit I. So that way keyframes are automatically created from my camera. And then as the ribbon grows, we'll just follow it. So just go, follow it up in this direction. I might have to increase the resolution more to get rid of these kind of edges here. So I'll hit I. And then as it continues to grow, you know what I'm thinking of? Let's move it over here. Did you guys watch Reading Rainbow when you were kids? Well, Reading Rainbow, but you don't have to take my word for it. So I'm just going back through. So I'm just going back through and setting keyframes so it's still pointing at where the path is growing. Noticing that where my keyframes are, if I don't want keyframes to be really close to each other. This is not the world's best example, but you get a rough idea. So anyway, we're following it. And here's a cheat. If it's not staying in focus very well, I can just take the camera, I can zoom the camera way out. And so, it's pretty rough. This is just a proof of concept that I can quickly make a rainbow shape and make a ribbon, and then we can follow that. So now that we know that process, we can just save this out. Let's go File, Save As, and we'll call this. Animate. Call this Rainbow Boy. Rainbow Boy, yeah. Now, let's just quickly make that goofy grid that we saw in the other video. I'm just going to scale this up. And because we're just doing crude motion graphics, the scale and things like that are not terribly important. I'm going to go into edit mode on this plane. I'm going to subdivide it. Let's subdivide it maybe 30 times. So we have this grid. It's good to know. I'm glad that you're learning other software at the same time, because then you can contrast and compare. It's like, going to Burger King and McDonald's. They're two different restaurants. They're both doing the same thing. They're just going about it differently. But at the end of the day, you get food that's unhealthy. Mostly. I don't know. Maybe. Okay, so I'm going to add a wireframe. I'm not going to add a wireframe. I'm going to change my plane so that it is a wireframe. So I'm just going to go to Generate under the modifiers and wireframe. And then thin it out. You got it. 0.01 should do it. So now we've got a simple wireframe. Let's go back over to shading. All right, let's go over to shading, and then let's turn on render mode. I can't remember, in the video, was the background black? Yes. Okay, let's change the world so it's black. All right, and then let's give this a new material. And instead of being a white color here, it's just going to be purple. You can change it to whatever you want, but if you're going to have a 1980s grid, it might as well be purple. 1, and we can't really see it properly because it's in the orange bounding box to show us that it's selected as 1. So we'll just turn off overlays, and so we see our purple grid right there.
Can you put an emission on it?
That's what it is. It's an emission right now.
Oh, it is?
Yeah, that's why I don't have, if I don't need any lights in the scene, because everything is just sort of glowing. And now, if I bring in the computers and so forth, the ionic columns that the other one had, then yes, then what was I going to say? The ionic columns and all that, those need lit somehow. They can have some fake lighting. They use a lot of fake lighting for things like this back then. I think about, has anyone seen the first Starship Troopers? I love that film. I love that film. And I don't like violent films, but like, it's the best film because, and I saw it in the theater when it came out, and Paul Verhoeven is like, let's make a film that tricks the audience into rooting for Nazis. And that's what he did. It's down to the costumes and everything. And everyone's like, back in the 90s, this feels vaguely fascist. What's going on? Because in the future, it's like it's like a utopia, but it's a fascist state. And we find ourselves rooting for, okay, I'm going off topic. Watch Starship Troopers. It's messed up. And so,
It sounds familiar.
okay. All right, anyway. So we've got our grid, and if we go back to our source video here, I guess the grid is blue in this. It's so crude. It's so crude. Yeah.
After you finish, do you remember that VHS like converter thingy that you showed us? You showed us again.
Yeah.
I mean, I just forgot the website.
I forgot the website too. I got to find it. It's an app. It's an app that we download that makes everything look VHS-y, and you don't necessarily have to make things look VHS-like. It's done, right? But it's fun. It's fun to do. Okay. Anyway, let's take this. So I've got the camera. Let's just zoom out a little bit. I'm just going to make some crude animations like we saw before. So we saw the grid, and the other one was more of a blue, but you don't have to copy it. You can make it whatever you want. If you want it to be green.
IKEA catalog has a stone.
Stone temple? Why is there a stone temple at IKEA? All right. So I'm just going to move the camera around a little bit. And in the original video, they might have moved the grid around to make things move around, not the camera. But I'm going to move the camera because that's what I do. And it looked like it moved over the course of about a couple seconds. So, and I'm running at 24 frames per second right now. So we'll come down here to about this size. I'll set a keyframe. And so I just hit I, and then a keyframe is set. If you don't believe me, I look over here, I see there's keyframe set. Okay, and then I'll move the mouse, the cursor over here a little bit because it did this sort of turntable thing for a little while. And turntable movements usually take more than one keyframe, but I'll just set that here and keyframe. Now if I play this, what we're going to see is Blender's trying to make everything nice and smooth, right? It's not that nice and smooth, it's nice and fast and clunky. But what we can do is we can make the animation more clunky, like their animation, which I can't believe I'm doing this, but it's super fun to make things bad on purpose. So I'm going to go to the graph editor, and we see our nice smooth curves of those keyframes. I'm just going to grab those guys and go right-click, interpolation mode, linear. So that gets rid of the curves, and will immediately make the animation. Let's look at it in wireframe mode, so you can start seeing it like. There we go. So now it's got that clunky feel. And one thing that you can also do is to make things even clunkier, because I think that's what I saw here, is right now if I open up the timeline and look at the camera's transformations, everything's in sync with each other. All the X, Y, and Z rotations and so forth are in perfect sync with each other, and that makes it feel a little bit more in control. So if we just make those guys a little less in sync with each other, right? Then that will have a strong effect of making it feel even more clunky. We're breaking things. We're doing it wrong, right?
Yes.
Let's see this from this angle here. I think it might look better. No, it looks worse. Yeah, there we go. Okay, and if we turn off overlays, we just see the grid itself. You can almost hear the flock of seagulls, right? That's pretty cool. So it's kind of fun to think about, but like in the film, what's it called? Escape from New York?
I just John Carpenter. Yeah.
So this scene of the computer graphics in Escape from New York. Come on, give me the thing. Yeah. So they couldn't get the computer graphics. It was too expensive. So they made a 3D model. They made a real physical model of New York City, and put highlight tape, like reflective tape, on all the edges of the buildings, and then just did a photographic effect to make it look green. And that's how they created computer graphics, by moving a camera over the city. And it's like they put so much work into that, and it's kind of cool to know. And it might be fun to try something like that, to actually build a physical model and try to create something that looks like old CGI. And there's a good Reddit, there's a retro CGI Reddit that doesn't have as the fun stuff that isolated graphics has. But anyway, so we've got this guy now. And if we wanted to do like the rainbow thing that we saw before, I've already made the rainbow. Let's go ahead and taste the rainbow. So it's right here. Let's do the grid.
Professor, have you seen the movie with Sandra Bullock, The Net?
Oh yeah, it's so good because like she orders a pizza online. It's amazing. The opening scene in The Net, she orders a pizza online, and in 1995, our minds were blown that we could order a pizza without talking to anybody. And like all the introverts in the world were like, we've got to have this. And they built the internet because of that.
That's really sick. Wait, when did that come out? I just want to say, is that
95,
90s?
I think it came out in 95. All right, anyway, let's append. And I don't necessarily need the rainbow. I just want the material that I made with the rainbow. And I can't remember which one it was now. So, and if any Blender folks are watching, it would be nice if we got a preview when we append objects of the material in the append window. That might be kind of a cool way of doing things. All right, anyway, let's make our rainbow shape. And I'm just going to guess what shape I want here. So I'm just going to add, let's add a Bezier curve. There it is. Let's move it up a little bit, GZ. Let's go into edit mode on it. And we need our overlay so we can see what the hell we're doing. And let's just extend this guy out. And I'm just going to have a random rainbow going in different directions. And I'm going to turn off the plane because it's getting in my way. And we don't need this empty either. Did I make that empty? I don't remember. Okay. Let's go into edit mode, extend, G. And that rainbow in the original video went all over the place, but we're not going to do that. So G. All right, so we've got a curve. Let's go over to geometry. Let's go over to geometry. Let's go to extrude. All right, and so places like this where the geometry sort of overlaps with itself, you probably want to avoid, because that might make some crunchy sort of looks. And then let's increase the resolution. Looks like a tapeworm. Because I've had pets. If you grew up before we had all the cool medicine that we have now to control tapeworms, like your animal would, like the tapeworm would come out. Yeah, it was awful. It was nightmarish. You don't want that to happen. Whatever you do though, don't look up pinworm, then you'll have nightmares.
I've seen that, pinworm.
And there's worse worms that Jimmy Carter helped annihilate, but that's another story. Okay, looking at the shading, it's one of these materials that I imported that I did not name properly. It's this one. There we go. So now I don't have to rename it. Pretty cool. Okay, good. And if we see any of this kind of stuff here, you might just need to increase the resolution of the curve itself to smooth it out. See? There we go. So if we turn on the plane now, there we go. Seeing how it looks in a render. Let's do a quick test render in Eevee. There we go. Okay.
You can add grain to it and stuff like that.
We can add the glare and everything, and that might be kind of a good idea, but we can add a lot of that with the VHS effect graphic, that if that's something we want to explore. But if we wanted to add some sort of other quality to it, like the One thing that might be kind of cool, and I got to think of a way of doing it, is to make it look like it's sparkly and glowing when the rainbow is growing.
Yeah, I saw that. Like they have the sparkles go from to the left and to the right.
Yeah, in order to do something like that,
After Effects.
could be tricky. I got to think of a way to do it. Yeah, Dondre.
If you was to do it in After Effects, also in Photoshop, you can edit video now in Photoshop and add stuff with the same like layers that you would normally use.
Yeah, Photoshop has had video abilities for about 15, 16 years, but it's mostly rotoscope and transforming video. But you can try. It would be pretty labor intensive. Anything that you have to do in this class where you're doing it frame by frame by frame by frame, avoid it. Avoid it, because that's how we get stuck and mired in tedious work, extremely tedious work. And so just be warned that could happen. Anyway, let's edit this graphic a little bit. Move this up here. G. Watch out for these sharp corners because they will get you.
Right there. Oh.
It's got a little curve to it.
I saw the both.
There we go.
Yeah.
Reading Rainbow. There we go. Notice how changing one changes all of them. Yes. Okay. Anyway, let's make a quick animation where this starts growing at the end of this animation. Notice that I'm not trying to copy the animation exactly. I'm just sort of being inspired by it. But okay, so about right here, we'll go over to the mapping rules, start and end mapping, and then we'll just create that animation there. So as it gets to about right there, we'll say, reading rainbow, and then the line will grow out. Like that. Set a keyframe. And then we see it, it goes, it's all clunky, and then the animation goes like that. So after we got something like that made, we can come over to our compositor. Let's change this to the compositor. Use nodes. Make sure if you're using the compositor, we turn on camera. Okay, and then let's go over to filter and bloom. Not filter, soften, but rather filter, glare. And then notice it's adding the glare right now, but let's do bloom. There we go. And we can change the threshold so everything's super glowy. And you can change the size so it doesn't get out as far. So then lower the threshold, but decrease the size and turn up the quality. Save often, because on these computers in particular, these kind of effects might cause it to become slightly unstable because it usually uses a little bit of RAM this way. Something to keep in mind, if I switch over to the compositing nodes, I can come over to options, and we can use the GPU instead of the CPU for doing the post-compositing effects. It might make it a little bit more stable, might make it a little bit faster. It might have the opposite effect. It's hard to say. Okay, let's go back over. Where was I? Was I in layout? Yeah. And then if we wanted to add anything else, something I like to add is distort. It's way overdone, but if I go to filter and transform and distort, lens distortion, usually put it after the glare. What lens distortion does is if we turn on projector and turn it up way high, it creates this chromatic aberrations around the edges of things. Let me turn it down, you'll see what it's doing. So it creates basically lens imperfections. I don't usually use it very much, but one thing that we can do with it is, in addition to lens dispersion, we can create lens distortions. So if I turn this up, is it not going to do it? Okay. If it's not doing it, then that's a limitation of this GPU. It can't handle it. Let's switch this back to CPU and see if that'll fix it. Distortion? Nope. All right, so it's not working. Oh, let's turn off projector. There we go. So you get these really fun distortions if you want in the compositor. And so that'll play in real time. Let's open up a timeline. And it doesn't look completely done right now, but you get sort of an effect of what's going on. I don't normally have these effects turned up this high. I'm just doing it for illustration purposes. Let's have this up here, and then I forgot, when you turn on projector, it doesn't distort it. It just gives it that lens distortion look. And I normally only have it at like 0.1, but it just makes it seem a little bit more organic. But you can add all of that in that VHS filter if that's what you want to do. What else? I don't want to go on forever with this demo. I want to do some tests with the other glares before we decapitate the ionic column. But yeah, I think that gives you a rough idea. Now, let's render this guy and see how it actually looks. We don't want to use motion blur or anything because they didn't have that back then. They just had this crude sort of movement. All right, so our endpoint will be here at frame 120. And we start right here on frame 0. Let's give it an output. We'll go to documents, not this document, but this document, and we'll call it rainbow grid. Accept, and instead of a PNG, because we're just doing a quick test, we'll do an FFmpeg, and we'll make sure that that's a H.264 and an MP4. Notice when I click on it, nothing changes. That's bad UI, because it doesn't confirm that that's what it's on, but know that it is. And if I roll off of it, then it's there. So my input and output is 1 to 120, 1920 by 1080, and I'm making an MP4 file. Always hit save before you render, and switch it back to flat shading, because if it's on rendered shading when you render, it renders both the render and the viewport at the same time, and on weaker computers that these are, it could cause some instability. Let's go to render animation, and so now we got our animation going. If while it's rendering you don't see the glare or compositing effects, don't worry, they're there. So it should render really quick. Notice sometimes you'll see it. Yep. Oh, to make it look pixelated and low res?
I think it looks better than actual pixelate. It makes it look more grainy.
So pixelate is meant to turn off anti-aliasing, is the way my understanding of the filter tool works. Let's try it. It's a good idea. Or you could just render it at low resolution and then scale it up in After Effects. And turn off, if you render it at like a standard definition resolution and run it through the VHS machine or a factor, then most people would believe that's what it is. Let me see if I can remember what that tool is called. I have it over here. I think I was using it in October. There it is. It's not there. Is it in November? I have too many files. I don't know where it is. I'll find it though. Let's see what we made. There we go. It's not really portfolio worthy, but it's close to what we were trying to emulate. And so if we ran this through a few other filters or whatever, that might have the effect that we're looking for. Let's try real quick what Aiden suggested. So we're back in the compositor. Let's look through the camera. And then we'll take all of this after. So let's use transform. Scale it down to like 0.2, and then use transform again and scale it back up. And so now it's kind of hard to see because it can't process it all in one go. But yeah, we definitely have very low res. If we want to, we can not take it down so far. And you can change okay, so it looks like the transform is using the nearest interpolation mode instead. Nearest neighbor is what this is called. So if you switch this back to bicubic, then it will anti-alias it and make it softer. So, or you can use bilinear, and it's a different type of interpolation. So the reason it does look pixelated is because it's just pixelating, because it doesn't. It's not trying to anti-alias the graphics at all. So yeah, that is kind of a cool effect. And so you have easy pixelization that way. Let's do 0.5, and then we'll just scale it up to. There we go. Let's see what that looks like. File save, render, go. Now I will look again here because I know I have it in here. It's called NTSC-RS. And it creates a VHS effect of any video that you run through it. So if I download it, don't use the After Effects plugin. I noticed it was really unstable. But you can download it from Mac, Windows, or Linux, and just use it as a standalone application. And I don't know how many viruses this will give you, but probably only 2, yeah. All right, so if the IT people were watching this video, they would have a heart attack. So it's fairly trustworthy because I found this from other people that I trust. Okay, so extract all. It big. Did this finish rendering? Did. Let's see what we got. No, it didn't finish rendering. It's a lot of files. Okay, once it's exported, you can just launch it, or not exported, but extracted. And then if it works on this computer, we'll see this beautiful interface. Okay, has that finished rendering? Yes. So let's file open. Let's go to animate. Here's the thing I just rendered. And this is what it does to it. So it adds all the glitch.
It's not cheating if you use this, right?
It looks real. It's still high res, but you can change everything. So we can change the kind of noise. You can change the head switching. You can change the ringing, chroma noise, edge wave. So you can play around with the setting. Scale to 480. How much chroma do you want in there? Let's see, signal noise. I'm trying to make it a little less noisy. And then tracking noise. If you don't want so much tracking noise in there, we can turn that down. But yeah, this is a cool effect. I really like it a lot. So there we go. And if you come over, you can say split, so you can see what it originally looked like. There you go. And so then to actually render that, you could come over to the render tab, and then it makes an H.264 and with different kinds of encoding speeds, and then destination file. So just give it, put it in the same folder, animate, and it automatically adds a name to it. And then we hit render. Good. Come back over here, and here's the new NTSC crappy animation that we just made that most people would believe comes from the 80s.
Do you think if we put this on our portfolio, it would deter employers from us? They don't know that though. They don't.
They'll think that this guy's working 30 years in the past.
Yeah, you could say your work experience goes back to the 80s. I'm sorry for my really old stuff. Where does this come in handy for like what you're doing? I don't know, but we're doing studies of old graphics because this is just my trick to get you to study old motion graphics. But if you call it study, and if you build a proper project site on your portfolio where you say, this is a project, this is the one I was emulating, these are the tools I used to create it, then it becomes advanced. If you see it by itself without context, then it's not as impressive. Right? So, but if it's on your portfolio and you can say, look at the styles that I can emulate and look at all the different tools I'm using to do that, then things start getting interesting. And that's the kind of stories you're trying to tell. Everything is a story, and your portfolio and the work in your portfolio is a story that you want to, that other people need to see and be able to decipher without you there explaining it to them.
And you need tools as in like, oh, I use Blender and
You can mention that, or you could just say I use 3D software for this, and then I use an open source tool for the video effect, and so forth and so on. I would be wary about tying your skills too closely to one or two software, like I have, but rather just having a diverse array of abilities and different tools. That the tools are less important than your sophisticated way of approaching your work.
I've had a question on my mind for about a week. It was, so say you're more skilled in Blender than After Effects, but on your resume you put skills After Effects, Blender. How do they know that you're not really that good at like certain that one, but you're really good at that one? So, like,
They know one of two ways: the quality of your work in your portfolio. But what I see a lot of people do is they'll just put a graph, like for their different skill levels and different software. So like Illustrator Intermediate, Photoshop Expert, so forth and so on. And then you can just say it like that. But that requires you to have the ability to know what you don't know,
yeah.
right? One thing I've noticed emerged over the past few years is a lot of students think they're experts, and because they think they're experts, they don't have a growth mindset. They don't have a mindset that I can learn, because they think they already know everything, and that just gets in their way. So I have to unteach them. I have to show them that they don't know everything, and as long as I keep thinking that I don't know much, that always gets me motivated to learn, because I don't like feeling like I don't know. But that's a permanent state, because the more you know, the more you realize the more you don't know, right? But that's only true to a degree, because when you look behind you, you find out, oh, I've been learning all this stuff, and I know quite a lot now, and I can figure stuff out on the fly, and that gets exciting.
It does get exciting, because then you can use that to learn the things that you know.
Exactly. All right, that's enough for now. Let's take a break, and then we'll do something else.